All right, we will call the February Parks and Rec Commission meeting to order, and we're gonna rearrange the agenda a little bit tonight so that Deb can go and hit the hard, heavy stuff first. So we have Summer Camp 2020, and there is some material that the subcommittee met and reviewed, and maybe you could just give us a top level summary?
Sure. So we got together, and based on where the numbers were last summer, there was a loss in the summer camp line. We know primarily that was due to the payroll.
Yes, yeah.
That was from the payroll, and I think we've talked about this before going into it. We were overstaffed last summer. That with the increase in the pay, the $2 per hour that the staff increase got. And a bigger piece to that was the attendance or lack of, because families were asked to fill out a calendar to let us know what they were coming, how many weeks, how many days. Based on that, that's how we did our staffing. Well, that did not happen, and so there were a few different factors in why we lost money, but I think payroll was really the biggest one. So a couple of things that we talked about, and before we go into the other piece, we'll jump down to number 4 where it says getting the payment for summer camp in installments. I feel like this is going to be the most accurate way to know who we have coming for the summer, and then we can do our staffing according. So March 1 to March 31 is when registration will open. We will still offer the 10% discount for any families that pay for any days and weeks during that month. Then on April 1, whatever attendance or weeks you're going to use, 33% would be due. Says non-refundable. Again, we'll talk about logistics of it. Then May 1st, another installment, and then all payments should be complete by June 1st. I think it's going to be an adjustment for families because we've never done anything like that before, but I do think it's the only way that we're going to get true numbers and know exactly who's coming to camp. And holding them accountable. Like I said, we had a lot of families last year that signed up for 9 weeks and never came. Not one day. So times that by 20, 30 families, and that's a huge hit.
$10,000.
Huh?
$10,000.
Yeah. And we've always been, I like the idea of having the flexibility of letting families pay week to week to week. And for the most part, most families are good about that, but it makes it hard to staff and to know what we need for staff. And, these kids that we hire for the summer, they want to know what they're doing for 9 weeks. Are they working 2 days? Are they working 3 days? Are they working, and that's what I did last year, is I staffed them based on what I thought we were going to have for numbers. We also overstaffed knowing that we were losing a lot of staff this summer. So the exposure for the younger kids coming in was important. So then, Nick started running some numbers, and do we need to have another fee increase? And that's what all this breakdown is that Nick and I went through and we had the subcommittee meeting. Do we increase the rate to $150 per week, $30 a day? And then the question comes into play, are we going to charge for the trip fees on top of it? So there's a couple of different options that we came up with to see how best to handle it. We've been doing the research with camps all around. I have all that stuff here. And, the average camp for, and I've got here, like Chester and Epping and Nottingham and Barrington, based on what their weekly rate is, if you average it out, it's about $175 a week for camp. So we're still less than the other towns, and a lot of them are charging trip fees. the true cost of what the premium trips are down there. That's what it actually costs per child to go on, and that was 2019. That could go up this year. They haven't, a lot of that information is just not out yet. We haven't booked all of our trips yet. So come on, bring on the questions.
Well, to echo what you've been saying to this point, we met as a subcommittee and we discussed this in fair detail, and we did sort of come to some consensus and conclusions that I believe we did at the meeting, and we had a parent representative there too, so he was not only on the commission, but he's someone that uses the services, and I think you were in agreement with some of the recommendations about a rate increase.
Yeah, so,
Yeah. So, we talked that rate increase would be in order, that we would look to hold people accountable, like you said, and have the installment plan, and that they wouldn't be refundable unless it was some sort of extraordinary hardship type situation, that, that they came and made a good case to get the money back, illness in the family or something to that sort. The one thing we hadn't finished, though, we did tease out the trips that we would look to pay them, and that you had a nice plan about having, using the state park system so that you would be able to continue to do a lot of trips at a reduced cost.
Yep.
The bus fee would be one of the considerations there. So you still had to charge something. As part of that, you thought that the option of having kids stay back and not attend the trip and pay an extra thing so people could decide, because they don't want to attend for whatever reason, whether it's too expensive or it's just not their cup of tea to attend a certain event. So that would give the family some flexibility if you had the trips handled separately. The piece we left unresolved, which was sort of like asked afterwards, whether we charge a rate for all the trips and divide it up by the number of trips, or we charge for the premium specific. So if Canopy Lake costs more, it's a $36 trip, and if you're gonna go to Chuckster's, that's a $25 trip. So rather than charge something and split it up and average it, if you wanted that premium trip, you would pay for it, you would know. It would also give the department an understanding of what people really wanted to do, for the value that, I'm gonna go to Canopy Lake, and the fees spread over multiple events, but I'd rather go to Chuckster's anyways, or whatever, it would be a referendum of sorts. So I think we were very impressed with the amount of prep work that went into that subcommittee meeting. It was very comprehensive. It looked at it in a lot of ways. And I'm still supporting, some of those ideas for the rate increase, the installment plan, and then to kind of figure out how the trips should actually be charged if we're gonna do that. So, Dwight's not here, but he was the fourth on that, right?
yeah, Dwight was the only one.
Do you get a discount by sending all of the campers on a trip on the same day? I'm just thinking if you, instead of sending a bus on one day, sent the 15-passenger van on 2 days, but would that be a logistical?
We only have a 12-passenger. I can only take 10 kids.
Okay.
I mean, the van,
Yeah,
I can only take 10 kids.
and you have a bus full of 60 kids that's going on Thursdays
Well,
generally?
we're just
or-
using 60 as kind of a number.
Yeah,
I can take, the school buses hold 77, that is their capacity, but break that down into if you have the kids and,
I was just thinking if you could somehow stagger the trip day, or make more than one trip day with fewer, maybe by grade level, but if you would be sacrificing some sort of group discount if you did it that way,
probably.
yeah.
Probably. The group rate usually goes from like 10 to 49, and then 50 and up, it
Yeah,
goes down even more, and then every 50, it just continues to.
it might become
Yep.
confusing.
The state park thing is limited to like a coupon book with 5 trips in it or something?
Yeah, that's a bus load, I can take 77 kids, so let's just say, for example, if I have 70 kids going on the trip, I can have 4 adults in the bus with those kids, and that's usually where we use the van. I usually take the older kids in the van, because that will take 10 kids off the bus. I can put more staff in there, and then have 2 staff in the van. And it's by the busload.
Admission to the state park is by the busload, so, yeah.
Yeah.
But there are only 5, you're only allowed to do it like 5 events, what you.
It's $25 per pass.
Okay, you can buy them individually? Or-
Well, it's a block of 125 that we would buy. So it would be 5 state park visits we could go on. If for some reason it was a big trip and I needed 2 buses, I would use 2 passes for 1 trip. So we have 9 weeks of camp. We would do 4 premium trips and then 4 state park
Plus you're getting VZ.
and VZ. And, yeah. And then the last week of camp is always the end of summer barbecue. I just, I want to be very cautious with any fee increases. We've seen the numbers go down. 2017, we had 176 registered for summer camp. 2018, we had 136. 2019, we had 127. They're going down. Some of the reasons that I have seen is other people in town are making their own offerings, so people are using in-home daycare services through the summer for after-school. It's also the age, it's the wave of the age group that we have in summer camp. But I don't want to raise it so much that families can't afford to send their kids here, and then the numbers are just going to dwindle. I'd rather be able to, I don't know, it's just, it's a tough one. I get that we have to do true costs, and we're trying to recover from last summer. I know this summer, the payroll is gonna be a lot less, because we're gonna be going with a lean staff this summer. We've lost a lot of our top staff. We're still gonna have a quality camp. It's not gonna, that's not gonna suffer. And holding these parents accountable to what they're using is hopefully gonna help. It's a sensitive subject. We raised our rates last year in summer camp, and we're now looking to do it again, and it's a lot of change. We're looking to now ask them to pay from 125 to 150. The early drop rate is going to go up, and now we want to put a trip fee on top of that and ask them to have everything paid by June 1. It's a lot to swallow for families that have been able to go week to week and be so flexible. I think we need to do it with the having everything paid by June 1. I do think that I support that. It's the only way we're gonna have an efficient camp and know what we need for staffing.
You seem emotionally torn, which is,
I am, I've been doing the camp for 10 years now, and, I think about the families that it would impact, and most of our families are at least a 2 household, have 2 kids in the program, so it's gonna affect them times 2. It's gonna affect some, I have a lot of families that are 3. We have times 4, so it is gonna be a huge impact, and I don't want it to be so, now they're looking elsewhere, and now we're losing, because we've priced them out of our camp, even though we're very comparable to, data supports that our camp is still less than a lot of the surrounding towns. And I don't want to keep going up and up and up. I'd like to find a good, comfortable number that we're at, that we can sustain for at least, the next few years. I just don't know what that's gonna be. And I'm looking at it, I look at it as a consumer, as a parent, I need to send my kid to, 8 weeks of summer camp, and this is what it's gonna cost. And is it more cost-effective to have grandma come and stay with the kids? So yes, I am.
What's the or scenario in the revenues? Is that if,
Where are we?
so, page 2, total projected revenues under the current fee structure, it says 73,950 or 66,795. And then down the second paragraph, with the new fee structure, 103,000 or 93,000. Is that based on the trip?
So I think where it says total projected revenue 73, I think that's without the 10% discount.
So if everyone took advantage of the 10% discount, that
Yes,
lower number is what?
Yes, yes.
So it would stand to come out with 20,000 to the green, to the black, or what, I don't know, whatever the business term is, in the positive. You guys were good with the?
I'm doing my personal math at the moment.
But did you come out of the subcommittee meeting with the general agreement that,
I thought we did, that we looked at other, she did a lot of work, and I think it's almost a little bit of a change of heart, that she doesn't, now that we're actually
No,
gonna.
no, not a change of heart, just, I just want to be fair to the consumer, that's all. I just, I know that we have to do what we have to do, we have to make our numbers. But I also think about the consumer because that's my job, and I care about all the families here in town. I just want to make sure that we are being fair and not really continuously hitting them with fee increase after fee increase after fee increase. And it's a tough one because we went 10 years with the same rate. So that's what's really hard. It's not like we went 1 to 5 years, we increased, we went 5 to 10 years, we increased again. We increased last year, and here we are coming back the following summer and increasing again. I feel like we're gonna have to explain to these families why that is. And we have the numbers, we know why.
but I mean, with the projected cost of 70,000 and the current fee structure, the camp still stands to make money this summer if you don't have those same staffing.
Yeah, I think the staffing change, and just, like you said, the biggest thing is holding those families accountable. Those families that unfortunately left you in the lurch, I mean, you rectify those two things and you're back in the black.
Yeah.
That's what I mean, honestly, I almost don't want to throw this number out. For me, for a family of 4, and we utilize all those services. The early drop-off, which is huge, but for me, and I understand 4 as being an outlier, that's $6,740 for the full camp, which is a lot to swing.
Which would have been what?
That includes the trip increase.
No, but what would you have paid last year?
I wasn't quick enough to get there yet. But, and this is no calculator, I want
Less.
that on the record.
But
You
if you,
want to
if you kept, so,
Want to pick?
as Katie was saying, the cost, projected cost for 2020 is only $70,000, and if you kept the current fee structure,
It might lose, or it
you
might.
might make money, I guess it depends on how many, choose that 10% discount.
So I guess I don't know if maybe another way to tackle this is to maybe have like a plan, let's see with a slight increase this year, if that doesn't balance things out, and then balancing the staff and having the accountability of paying up by June 1. And maybe there's just a 2-3 year plan where we kind of gradually see where we need to get to.
Or maybe you carve out just the trips this year, because that's the 13.5. So that then it is more, if it's of value to you, you pay for it? Or I don't know if that's all trips or just the premium. So you keep the current fee structure, but then add that $30 fee for premium trips.
For all the trips under the structure.
Maybe, like, instead of doing both, you
Yeah.
do one now and reassess. Or vice versa, you up the fee,
Yeah.
but you don't tag on the trip registration.
And I think, Terry, I have been obviously looking at this since we met in January, and just looking at more numbers and more, thinking, and I know something has to happen, I just don't know what is the right plan. And,
We came to help you, and that was the thing, to, figure it out, and if the numbers look good, but maybe the caring wasn't as strong, in that moment, we lost sight of that, but thank you for bringing it back. Do we, is there a number that you think we should increase it and step this in? What I saw at that meeting was we went from red to black plus,
right.
but it wasn't exorbitant, but there was some variability, because if we do scare some people away, or some people take advantage of discounts, there were ranges, so we can make a lot or a little depending on how well people manage the system. I definitely believe that if you're gonna staff and you're gonna plan, you need people to commit.
Yeah.
So, you know,
That for me is the biggest piece. If, you know, I strongly support the payments, you know, the March through June 1, where you have that option to do the early pay, and then the 3 payments. And obviously, if there's a hardship, we're gonna work with families. We're not gonna be, no, you know, I do it all the time with after school. You know, if there's a hardship, we're gonna work with families and make it happen. It's not gonna stop them from coming to camp because, you know, they can't have everything paid by June 1, but if they are working with us, I think that's something.
and they're coming rather than not coming at all. I mean, that
Exactly.
shows interest and connection that you can foster. I mean, the thing with the trips was good too, because I think last year you had somewhere around 10 or 11 trips, but they weren't, the state park thing was a discounted thing or something, wasn't it?
We didn't do that last year.
Right, but, so that was substituting for some other trips that,
Well, I just wanted to embrace New Hampshire a little bit more this camp. You know, I wanted to get more outdoorsy, just based on the feedback from our environmental camp we had last year. It was just so well received. So it just got me thinking last summer that maybe we need to just be more outdoorsy. They're Deerfield kids. They love to be outside and exploring and walking through the woods. And I've been working with Denny about, we're gonna do a whole, with our potentially 6th grade group, we're gonna do all the trails of Deerfield. And
Oh, cool.
yeah, so, I mean, I've got a lot of fun stuff planned for camp that we can cut costs on and just explore what's in our backyard. So I'm doing my part to try and cut costs, but still give the kids the quality camp that they've always had. So that's why that's another
You know,
reason
so,
why, I
yeah.
just wanna make sure that we're,
so if we save that piece, we might, you know, we need to save costs. The idea was to at least break even, I think.
Yeah.
That's the sort of
I
the,
understand to be the goal of each.
yeah. It seems to be the unwritten goal to have any
Not to
program.
make money, or, you know,
Yeah.
not to crush it, but not to support itself and the overhead administration of the.
Although this program and the after-school program have traditionally, you know,
Over,
yeah, overbooked, you know, overmade money to support other things, so, you know, that becomes a balance too. What's the timetable on this? I forgot too, before you actually start sending things out, that we should have a decision as a commission.
so February 19th is our summer camp open house, which everything needs to be locked in by then. And then March 1st is when registrations will open, and that's for the 10% early discount.
Did you get a sense, or even a gut feeling of what, if not $5 per day or whatever, new numbers? I mean, my sense is we do have to do some sort of increase.
I agree, and I
Somewhere.
think it's in here, the, what it would, I mean,
You seem to be saying, though, it's too much, and Tom's running numbers here, it's $1,740 more than what he would have paid last year. That's a
But again,
lot,
that's
that's
for
for
a
1
family
year.
of 4 taking advantage of everything that's offered with all the trips. So I don't wanna,
Right.
I guess I just wanna, I wanna see which is, because it would be a lot, if we threw the rate increase of $150 a week, the increase to the early drop, the, 3 payment installments, and then we're asking for a trip fee, I just feel like that is an awful lot.
That feels like a lot.
It does, it feels like a lot to me,
And
you
I
know,
think-
and,
To kind of echo what Terry said and what you were saying, you know, the feedback from the kids even going over to VC, which is something they do all the time, right? But they still love that day away. So if we can do those state park trips, save some money there, something that they would truly enjoy. I guess if we had to number our priorities on what we'd be changing, I would say hold everybody accountable. The trip fees being reduced by, or the trips switching over to that format where you're saving on those 5, and then looking at the price increase, because again, we're still in the black with fixing our staffing and holding those people
Definitely.
accountable, number 1.
and we're gonna change the look of our camp too, you know, based on, you know, we have 100 kids, we'll have, you know, 10 to 11 staff.
Yeah.
And we keep everybody up here, you know, traditionally, we have been spread out all over the place. You know, so we have a group of staff and kids over there, and we have a group of staff and kids down at gazebo and here, you know, we'll just tighten things up, and we can still give them a great camp. You know, I'm willing to cut costs and still give a quality camp.
Are you saying that the premium trips are, say, $30 a day in addition to $30 a day for camp?
No.
So if
We-
somebody's paying $30, if we went to $30,
Yep.
does that cover the cost of the trip?
Today it does, but under this new proposal, it would be,
In the past, it's always been included,
Separated.
Jeff.
Right,
Now it would
yeah.
be in addition. So
We've
again,
been-
for me, it would
yeah.
be my weekly fees, then $120.
Right,
for
but I'm
my kids.
looking, altitude is $29 a day per kid for the trip. What's the $30 that I register for gonna pay for if they're gone all day?
the staffing.
It's just the regular camp
Right.
fee.
Which, to me, looking at that, if I'm gonna pay $30, I would just take my kids to Altitude by myself.
Well, that's what we had said about Canopy Lake, when you get like the
Because you build
McDonald's
in the
discount
bus costs,
tickets.
and you can't
Well,
Right,
compete.
it's,
But that's what I was thinking.
that's no
I-
knock on the camp, that's just.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why I think if you increase it to $30 and just say this helps to cover the cost of these trips,
Yeah,
because they cost $30 a day, I wouldn't do this premium trip ad. I would just do a $5 increase per day to, and you can, not sell it, but you can show them, look, it costs us this much per kid, so at $30, we're
yeah.
more or less covering it.
And then with your projections, you'd be at a minimum of 80,000 in revenue approximate, so.
With the
about
$5 increase.
10,000 cushion, yeah.
And, we're jumping down to, from, premium trips, we had 8 to 10 last year. Because we also took the littles on one trip and then the older kids. So we had 2 bus fees per week. I mean, it was an
I think that'll
expensive
put you
camp.
in a good place.
Hmm?
I'm the optimist. I think it'll put you in a good place.
I really
with
do.
the changes that
Yeah.
you've discussed.
I mean, I've put a lot of thought into it, and again, I look at both sides. I look at where we have to look at as a department and financial, but then I have to look at it, what's best for the town and the families.
Deb, is there any insight as to what changed between 2017 and 18? Because that's where we had the biggest loss of kids.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the change in the time, the drop-off time? Was it change in fee structure?
I think a part of that, Eric, I went back and I looked at our camp is also changing. We used to be K through 8, and I think we had a bigger older kid population, and our teen trippers kind of would trickle out from that versus being a separate, everything registered through summer camp, K through 8, so I think that was a big part of it. And then just the increase of the way the grades, it's kind of a roller coaster of aging out of the program. We had a huge chunk that aged out of all our programs then, and they're trickling back up again, numbers are. Because if you go back to, I don't know if I have it in here, I have the numbers all the way from the very first camp. Just don't know if I have it with me. That was just our highest number ever.
Was, okay.
If you go back and you look, we average 100 to 130-ish campers, give or take. That particular summer was extremely generous.
Is there any multi-kid discount option?
We used to do multi-kid until we started, then the ones that only have 1 kid or 2.
So we switched to the early
So
bird.
that's what we started doing, the 10% discount, and a lot of families take advantage of that. 53 kids.
And how many kids take advantage of the early drop?
Average about 30 kids a day, between 24, I think it was, and 30-ish.
You have that 5 o'clock cutoff on the back end,
Yep.
so people try to.
And, and that change was based on what we used to have for the 5 to 6 hour. And everybody that felt the morning was more important, I need to get to work, because the bus normally picks them up and they're on their way, but if camp doesn't open till 8, they're really struggling. And we saw the kids, that 5 to 6 hour, the few kids that were left, it was tough on them and the staff. It was just a long hour, they were exhausted. And I just feel like the feedback that I've gotten, they love that early drop. And that transitioned very well, honestly. I mean, people adjusted to it without much to me anyway. I didn't hear about it much. But they appreciate being able to get to work on time and start their day. So,
So if we looked at rate increases for the per day, you know, and the holding the accountable and left the other trips sort of alone for the time being, what would your approach be? You're gonna have the parks trips, which are gonna be cost savings. Are you gonna do all 4 trips? Do you have any flexibility in kind of seeing who all registers and then say, well, we can drop a trip because we don't, you know, we're not gonna balance out? Or do you have to book those in advance, right? So like you're
I
booking
usually
those.
book them, I've already got Chucksters booked, and the other ones will be getting booked.
So it's gonna be a real cost for some number, for a busload of kids anyways.
This is really good information. I'm just thinking, do we want to make a motion and go on? I mean, I think this is all good stuff, but I think you need to have an answer by,
Yes, because you have a meeting,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
This month, right?
yeah.
So are we looking to just increase the amount per week to the
Sounding like
150 and the early drop off to $5?
That's,
And then leave the trips out of it?
That's what I'm
Yeah.
picking up.
And including that would be the holding accountable or.
The
Yeah.
yeah,
three
whole,
Deadlines.
payments,
Yeah.
that's the piece that I think is gonna
I
really
think that makes,
put us in a really good position.
Think of another
And you know,
place that
that's,
operates like
I
that.
mean, other camps that I register for, that's normal,
I know,
so.
and I have oodles. I have oodles of all summer camps, and,
Yeah, because you can't plan otherwise. You just can't.
yeah,
So to be
run a-
fair to your employees, you can't be having a kid work day to day, not knowing if they're coming in or not.
We're sending them home, you
Right,
know,
yeah.
they got there and,
It's not a restaurant.
yeah. So do we wanna make that motion and even if we don't completely balance out, at least we're gonna move it forward and we can see, we'll get more data for next year? I mean, we only lost $6,000 all summer last year, that wasn't, you know, we were able to, we had some reserves to support that, so we're gonna do better than that, and if we didn't, you know, we'll have to address it at a later time. Are you comfortable, Deb, with that?
oh, I'm totally comfortable, yeah, and I don't want to sound like I'm all flip-floppy, I want to be fair. I want to do what's right for everyone, including the department,
If
and
it's not about the kids and the families, then we don't belong here.
that's what I think about when I make every decision, is the families and the kids that are using our programs. So,
Right,
So
so,
I
can't help
think-
but get emotional.
Are we talking about, in your first page on proposed changes, proposing number 1, number 2, and number 4?
yes.
Yep.
Okay.
yes,
so I'll make a motion, I'll say increase the fee from $25 to $30 daily, or $150 a week. Early drop-off fee will be increase from $3 to $5 a day, and the payment installments will be as Deb has spelled out, or as the committee has spelled out.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, that
Thank you
committee
very
did it.
much.
You guys did a great job, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we are gonna rewind and do a review of the January meeting minutes. Is anyone, can I get a motion?
Make a motion, we approve the meeting minutes.
Second.
Any discussion, corrections, edits? They were a little slimmer than normal.
Thank you, Deb.
Thanks, Deb.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deb.
Feel better.
Nick and I had one.
Okay.
Under DPR warrant articles, about halfway through, the article seeks to raise $15,000 for town field maintenance, including tree trimming at Bicentennial. That should be at GBW.
Thank you. Anything else? We'll take a vote to approve the minutes as amended. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. DPR financial update.
I passed out to everybody, it's, beginning of the year, so there's not really too much to talk about, but a good month overall. for the month, we had an increase to the overall balance of a little over $6,600, with the majority of that coming from the after-school programs. So far, starting off a good year.
Do you want to make, there was a change, wasn't there, on the numbers that
Oh, yes,
yoga or,
so the $520 that
Softball.
went to co-ed softball,
Yeah.
they discovered was, actually should have gone into the adult yoga line number 07.
Yeah, I was gonna ask Pete about
to
that, okay.
Or to adjust.
Yeah.
The other question I had, I'm sorry, I didn't answer it, or give it to you ahead of time to look at, Kevin, was the major equipment purchase for $550. Do you have any idea what that was? I'm putting you on the spot,
I
I'm sorry.
think yeah, there was, I have it, there was something with a copier, and there was something else. I can follow up and
I was just curious.
tell you the exact thing later.
Okay. I just, wanted to state, like, I think we're trying to get towards each of these lines to break even, but when you look at, in your note, that you kind of point out that it's $5,000 a month to support administration, FICA, Medi, and retirement. So that's $60,000 a year of overhead that has to be absorbed by these
Yes.
other programs. So, I mean, at first I was kind of thinking, oh, summer camp is gonna be standing to make 20,000 again, but when you think about that overhead, I think maybe,
Well, in the summer camp, I think included in that revenue and expense was the salary for the director. So
for her, but not, I think administration is just,
it's Kevin and Deb, and so, that's, I think, one of the things that I need to look at is to break those two pieces out. But, yeah, so after school looks like it, gained a lot of money, but some of that has an offset in this administration line,
I see.
so.
yeah.
I mean, ideally, we would take, Deb's time and split it between after-school and summer camp, because those are the two areas that she covers. And then Kevin will be over everything else, because that's what he covers. So I know that it was all lumped into this line for, I don't know, clarity, but it does make it difficult to
See true costs.
see true costs, yeah. But yes, we do need to cover that administration line with everything else.
Any questions?
thank you.
Thank you, yeah, thanks. Basketball, softball, baseball, softball registration launch, sorry.
That's an interesting combo.
Basketball on the line.
Basketball. All right, so let's see here. I handed out a spreadsheet. Let me pull out mine here so I can look at what I have written down. Okay, so I've started to take a deeper dive into, we're talking about all these true costs for everything. We looked at soccer way back when we were talking about after school. And I started doing a deeper dive into youth baseball and youth softball. I sent this to both Tom and Dwight. I've had some conversations with them. Met with Dwight on Tuesday night after he got back in town to talk about these. I've got Pete to send me expenditure reports for 2019, 2018, and then just to kind of echo what Erica and Katie, you were saying about seeing the true costs with how the 80 fund is set up with like the administration lines and all the equipment and stuff. I had to take those big totals and with Nick sit down and try to figure out how those get divided across all the other programs. But we did it to come up with some of these fees here. But as you can see from this, you can see that this is, Nick and I felt that this was pretty much sort of, there's not much room to reduce these costs, but you can see that baseball and softball, our registration fees currently are not sustaining the program. And right now, this is just cost. This doesn't allow any room for equipment replacement for like bats and, you know, catcher's gear. Granted, we did a big overhaul a couple years ago when some regulations changed on Little League bats and whatnot, so we hope that that doesn't have to be done again for a few years. But these are some of the numbers that we see. You know, you have your league dues for everything, officials and umpires, you have the uniform cost, you know, you have your facility and maintenance, it's everything right down the line, broken down as a cost per player. And I took, in order to come up with some of these costs, I took the average number of kids that we had play in 2018 and 2019 to come up with the average, which you can see at the top. You know, we had 51 kids that played in single A to majors. We had an average of 35 kids for T-ball the past 2 years. An average of 12 kids for our Babe Ruth team, which is the bare minimum you can have to, by rule, put in a team, and then 28 kids in youth softball. So that totals 126 total participants across all 4 levels. So I don't know if anybody has any questions. I mean, I have also started looking at ways to cut costs. You know, one of the ways I called our uniform supplier, and we talked, and he said that we could save about $3 to $4 if we were to remove the sponsor from the back of the uniform and put it on the hat. He said the cost of the hat is the same regardless of what you embroider on the front. So that could be a little cost savings there, which would be about $300 to $400 roughly, which is a start.
You might want to run that by the sponsors, though.
Right.
Like, I know Don Cody tipped Luke at the Deerfield Fair because he was repping his company on the back of his shirt.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, that might
Yeah. So
just float, maybe ask their feedback.
yeah,
If it-
I mean, the one, it's, you know, either on the back of the jersey or on the front of the hat, where, you know, a lot of times the kids, that's what you're facing as opposed to
Yeah.
the back of the jersey, so it might be more exposure, I don't know. But that was one area that I said, well, where's one of the areas I do have some room to improve on? And that was just from remaining with the same vendor. It doesn't mean that we're ruling out the possibility of going somewhere completely different. But that was the easy place to start.
What's the total cost for the player?
Is there any opportunity for more sponsors?
Yeah, there's probably some more room. I know we try to find a team sponsor for every team, so that way they can be put on the back of the jersey currently, or if we make the change to go on the front of the hat. But we do have advertised or promote a banner sponsorship where a company could have a banner on like an outfield fence, so that way they're getting exposure that way. So there is that option.
So I see the line for anticipated sponsorship revenue, so it's, you know, it's not that much.
Right.
Does that, so that's just the sponsorship of the uniforms, one per team, is that what that is, or does that include banners too?
Yeah, so I went back and looked at what we got from last year. So for baseball, the 1,225, that was a combination of a couple of what's called a Grand Slam sponsorship. They did the banner and the team sponsorship together, as well as just a couple banner sponsorships. And then softball, youth softball, was a similar situation. I think a Grand Slam and a team one, and then an in-kind one for Tim Griffin for providing the speaker system for opening day, because if you think about the cost that it would be to rent that equipment, it probably balances out. So we gave him Savvy Sound reinforcement. We gave him exposure that way for sort of a cost savings one way for an in-kind.
So these, do you have a recommendation to move these fees up, or
In talking with Dwight, you know, you don't want to, again, we don't want to raise it so high that nobody can afford it. But could you look at the possibility of a small increase, whether it's 5, whether it's 10, and then also look to cut back in other areas? to try to get it closer. I don't know if you'd completely fill the gap, but then I know I voiced that same thought to Tom, as a consumer, if you've been, I think the current rate is 105, but then, you know, you change the style of the uniform or something, and you give that perceived that you're getting less. For the
Cost goes up
the
and
cost,
quality
the cost
appears
is
to
going
go
up,
down,
or,
then-
you know, how does, you know, that look from a consumer standpoint, or, you know, as a coach of a team, you know, we say, oh, well, we gotta cut back on the number of game balls you get per game, you know. I mean, they're not cheap by any means, but, you know, do we say, oh, if a ball goes in the woods at Hartford Brook or wherever you're playing, you gotta go get it, you know?
Have the league dues and the umpires lines gone up?
So the 1,700 is an anticipated, and so we've already paid 1,000 for Little League Baseball this year, and then the remainder generally depends based on the number of teams that you have, and you don't know that until your registration closes. Umpires, the league is going a different direction, using a different organization due to a bad experience last season with the arbiter that we were using, or the assigner. So that total there is what we paid for last year. It might go up slightly. I think the assigner fee last year was $5 per game. I think it's going up to $7 this year. So it might be a small increase. And then for softball, I've been trying to contact the new president to find out if umpire fees are included in our league dues. I would imagine at $951 they're not included in league dues, but I have not heard back on that, and that's why that's in yellow. So I guess another couple areas that I started to look at was infield mix. We put down new infield mix at Hartford Brook baseball side last year, and then the softball field across the street got completely re-leveled. Nick and I have been talking about, well, how many years can you get out of a load of infield mix? And what I actually did was contact somebody I used to work for at NHTI in the athletic department, and they actually use both Foster's and Golfscapes. They just did a laser level and everything similar to what we did. And everything that we were told, she echoed. And I think if done and maintained right, you know, teams take care of the field, you know, you rake it out after practice, you smooth everything out, kind of like what we asked others. You might get by with doing one field every 5 years. And so, for example, like we did the one at Hartford Brook last year, and we have a remaining pile right now. So then we come back and maybe we do the one across the street, we get a new pile. And then you go back to Hartford Brook and you do the softball side. And that way you always have a reserve pile for maintenance. And maybe you could get on a 5-year schedule. And then that would reduce the cost that way. You'd probably save about $900 a year if you were able to do that. And then another area was porta potties. Porta potties are costing us over $1,000, so I looked at what it would be to reduce the, you know, do you just do one handicap one at each location? The lady said that you want to be careful with that because the tank is smaller than a standard one because it has to, the seat has to be low enough for somebody that's handicapped to get on and off it, yes.
Is that the only reason we keep one over at Hartford Brook? Because we have the fully functional,
Yeah.
just so it's ADA compliant? Or-
I think so, and I think once we get that ramp up, we would be fine, and we could
Right.
eliminate that one altogether.
Yeah, exactly, that's what I mean. We should have a-
So, but I mean, like, for right now is when does that ramp get built? That's, you know, that's the other question. You know, I don't know. I don't know what the schedule is. I know Nick's been working on the timeline of everything, and I don't know where we are in that stage, per se. But that would, you're right, Tom, that would be a
And it's not a
saving.
huge savings, but it's something that way.
Yeah, I mean-
There's one less.
Yeah. So when I did it, if you did one handicap stall per location, so Bicentennial and Hartford Brook, for the roughly 2.5 months that we would have to or 2.5 billing cycles is what I figured out, because it's every 28 days. It'd be $840 for the 2.5 billing cycles. And that includes delivery fee and cleaning once a week. If you did the standard size, same thing, 2.5 billing cycles, it'd be about $530. Includes the delivery and the cleaning fee. But I don't know if you just want to get into the whole, just doing the standard one after we made sure to have handicap at each location last year. And then if you did one of each, it's approximately $1,300 and $1,330. So it makes me think that from the total that I have on the left, that we must have had only one, I think we just the one handicap at Hartford Brook last year, and we didn't have the standard one, and that would have brought the cost down. So,
Do you have a sense of what the other teams in the league are charging?
I would like to think that I think they're charging similar to what we were, our current rate, 105, or, I think one might have been on the high side, like 120, 125. But I think they're bigger towns, so their margin at the end, so a town that might have $3 to $5, but they get 200 kids to sign up, is easier for them than we have 120 kids. You don't have as much wiggle room, for covering costs. And that, you need a bigger margin at the end for your unexpected costs, your equipment replacements from year to year.
What if you looked at comparable towns that are our size, a Nottingham, a
Yeah.
Northwood,
I mean, I could, I don't know, I'd have to take a look. I think most towns that we play against, except for Candia, are all bigger, so I could reach out to Candia. I have a contact.
Bigger in registrations?
I think
I
so.
would think Nottingham would be pretty comparable.
Nottingham?
Chester. Who else do we play?
Northwood might be bigger.
Pittsfield might.
Barrington, I think we put.
Epsom.
Barrington doesn't play in our baseball softball league, but I can definitely reach out again. I know Nick sent out an email asking them again what their registration fees are, but I don't think that they were set or they weren't ready to launch them yet, so they didn't let them know. So,
Kevin, what's your timeline?
for our timeline,
Timeline, yeah.
well, we would like to get this launched as soon as possible. We're hoping to have it already launched, but as we were waiting to find out some more information about the Hoop Classic, which is information coming up next, it kind of adjusted our timeline for this, as we need to know that information before we launched. I think we'd like to have registration close middle of March. So that way,
Done,
Yeah.
closed.
yeah, so that way, as Hoop Classic is going on, Nick and I can start to work on this, as a lot of our time will be at the Hoop Classic, so we'll have sort of limited office time, but we can definitely get it done.
How many weeks does the program run?
We would hope, our goal is to start practices middle of April, Monday after Easter, hopefully, if the fields are in playable conditions. And then it would run until about the middle of June, so that's right about 2 months, right?
8 to 10 weeks, roughly.
Yeah. So last year, baseball lost 9,300 and softball lost almost 1,400. What do you expect the loss to be this year if you're not, the infield mix and different things that, you have the long-term stuff that might have been put in there or are included? Is it gonna be 10-6 again?
Probably not. I mean, we hope not. I mean, now that we're doing a study in this, we'd be maybe a lot more frugal on some of the other stuff, the unnecessary spending, try to limit that as best we can. Like I said, bats shouldn't be something that we need to do. All the teams have new catcher's gear. Babe Ruth, and talking with the coach in the past, he said that he might need some gear this year. So I think if there's any spending, equipment-wise, it would be for senior Babe Ruth. Because they've been pretty set the past couple of years, but due to kids aging out. We've been told that they don't know if they have a catcher that's gonna come up, that's gonna have his own gear. So they would need to, those are kind of things, usually the older you get, I'm a catcher, you have your own personal gear. So we need to do that, maybe a couple helmets and, a bat maybe, but we don't know.
First I want to say, this is really well done. This is really a lot of information here, and it's really helpful, so thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
I gotta ask the commission a question, though, if have Deb here, justifying how we're gonna regain the $6,500 that was lost, why, we're almost twice that for this particular activity. Do we do something to show that we're gonna try to move the needle in the right direction? Do we leave it alone and look at it, next year and continue with the numbers? I mean, what's the sense of it?
I think that a fee increase, it makes the most sense. I think that it's probably not fair to put the same sort of overhead on a T-ball player as you get on a Babe Ruth player in terms of like field costs. But I think across the board, they're all, losing. So I think a fee increase is justifiable. Dwight, I know this has been an area of sensitivity in the past to just move it up $10. I mean, when Luke is participating in activities, it's generally a much higher fee or a $10 drop-in. That's why I was asking how many weeks. So if you're talking 3 times a week for 10 weeks, that's 30 sessions. If you were paying a $10 drop-in, but that's a different, usually they're with, more like skilled instructors or something. It's a specialized thing. So, I mean, I don't know.
And I think we mentioned this a long time ago, when kids are trying out a sport, you want to be more inviting and less barriers to entry, because you don't know who's going to take. By the time they get a little bit older, they're committed, they bought equipment, maybe they got catcher's gear and they're going to do it. And if $10 isn't going to break their bank. But if you got 3 or 4 kids and you want to try T-ball and you're gonna, you don't really want to do it, and you two do, kind of, I'm not saying that really happens, but it could. So, do you want to have price increases instead of 10 across the board, to have a little 15 on one and hold steady, or $2, or just throwing out
Yeah.
ideas?
Yeah.
Because, another thing to be mindful is this is just the cost to play and get a shirt and some socks. So they still have to buy pants and cleats and a glove and
Yeah.
a bat and all those things. So, we just need to be mindful. It is an expensive sport. So I would urge us to find ways to reduce some of these costs if we can.
Like, I know, this is totally as a dollar, but lineup cards for the minors league last year
Yeah.
was not necessary. That whole
Right.
block thing got unused, but it's gonna save you 25 cents. So, I mean, I don't know.
Or
I mean,
are
and
there
that's-
opportunities to have fundraisers, or, I know concessions is a touchy subject for people because no one wants to do it. And I know that the 8th grade class did a lot of the fundraising at the concessions. But, maybe we could think of ways, or throw it out to parents, of different ways that we could raise money to help offset these costs, rather than keep just increasing the costs.
Yeah, if people start to get frustrated, then that's one alternative is,
Well, there's the volunteerism too, I remember Dwight and, one of the guys from my team, they spread all that infield over at Hartford Brook, by wheelbarrow or whatever, or I forget, I don't know exactly, I wasn't there, but they spent the whole day. It was like, we were gonna go over that night, and it was like, they were done. So, having professionals come in and do that, we're paying them, but if, the teams could do some of that,
yeah. Or the opening day celebration, like instead of just, have people solicit donations of food or,
Do we need water bottles? you know, if kids have played multiple sports, they have the same water bottle, so
Mhm.
can we cut those? I mean, just, and I know they're little things and they probably don't move the needle much, but if you could, I mean, you wanna show the value and you wanna give them something for it, but also just be mindful of keep increasing costs and,
Right.
you know, I remember when we increased the fees, I heard a couple parents saying, you know, what are we getting for this? And why am I paying so much for this? So we need to show the value of the program and what all the costs are. And I think this does a great job of showing it's, you know, you got league dues, you've got umpires, you've got uniforms, you know, maintain the fields. So there is a lot of cost that goes into these programs, and we can't keep subsidizing it from, you know, the after-school program. These programs need to stand on their own. But I think it would be good to have comparable pricing for other towns that are similar to us.
I know, I did make one call to another town, kind of asking what their registration fees did cover. And one of the big things that they don't cover is, facility and field maintenance and anything like that, because they're utilizing school fields already, or the town pays for that maintenance. And I think, you know, you can see that's a huge chunk right there.
Yeah.
That we have to try to account.
And I don't know why our town doesn't cover that, why it is part of Parks and Rec. Maybe there's some, you know, long history of that, but yeah, I think you're right, is these programs are sustaining field maintenance, and I get it's because it's, you know, user fees and they're using it, but
Mhm.
you don't have that in basketball because you get to, you know,
Right.
use a town facility.
Right.
But for soccer and for softball and baseball,
If the warrant article passes, there'll be some help though, right, for field maintenance? Is that,
Well, it sounds like those have earmarked projects
Yeah, yeah.
already,
Yeah.
tree trimming, and
And that would just be for a one-year thing.
you'd have to go back again in 2021 with
Right.
another ask.
but the field maintenance is in there. Is this, do they have
I
anything?
think that was to like redo the.
I think that was to help with the leveling, the laser
There was
level.
infield mix in there though, wasn't there?
I think that is dependent on whether the guy needs it. Cause like the one across the street for the softball field, he gave us a quote for a price if he's able to use the material that's already there, and then another price if he needs additional material to get everything to grade to where it needs to be.
I think as far as the warrant article, I personally wouldn't do anything yet, other than, you know, try to pick away at a few small things, but let's see if that warrant article passes. One of the questions at the deliberative session, which I don't believe any of you were at,
Senate rep.
I'm not a resident, so.
I was
Senate
there
Family
for
Rep.
the minutes, for the pledge of allegiance.
you were there for a few minutes, yes. That's how useful it
I
is.
supported the
so.
women's club and got some coffee.
But I think if that passes, one of the questions somebody asked, is this a one-time deal or not? And I said, no, I think the intent will be to put money in the budget for field maintenance. So,
Yeah, because when you're talking porta potties, that's not a user fee only. Anyone can go
right,
cheer on.
unless you
this-
lock them for each game.
Well,
you don't.
I actually did the math. So out of 168 hours in a week, we're probably at those fields somewhere between 16 to 20 hours.
Yeah,
All the other remaining times, it's open to the general public.
people are using them because of the playgrounds and stuff like that too. So I think,
Yeah.
personally, I would just let baseball tuition and stuff go as it is this year. See how the warrant article passes, and then next year, then we can figure on putting money in the budget to cover
Facilities.
facilities maintenance, right? Or again, a portion of it.
Would you recommend, because I think I was told that the warrant article is being voted on next Tuesday?
No, it's in March. Second Tuesday in March.
Second Tuesday in March, okay,
This Tuesday is a primary election.
okay, okay.
The-
Well, then that changes things.
The other thing is, we didn't have these numbers before. Dwight was sort of the pioneer and going out and started putting these numbers for Parks and Rec together so we can have some analysis and make informed decisions. So this is a baseline now, so rather than with just one page, maybe we do wait for that second year and say, you know, where are we? And, you know, what did happen and what do we need to do? I mean, so I'm agreeing with Jeff, that we just sit and wait. Do we need a vote to not do something?
Yeah, I don't think it's definitely sitting, I mean,
Or-
the fees would stay the same, but I think to try to still find areas you could cut back a little bit.
Would you recommend still keeping the early bird registration? Or would you, I know, Tom, you mentioned to me when we talked that you're indifferent on whether it stays or whether it goes due to that's an area where you have more loss.
Yeah, if the loss was, or if, if it was a significant amount of money that we'd make up, and again, personal opinion on that one, I would say if we had to start somewhere, maybe the early bird gets canceled, and it's just a flat fee right across the board for everybody. But
I would
again,
not, I would keep it,
I
because you
would,
said
yeah.
you're trying to make it consistent across all
Yeah,
sports.
I
and-
would keep it, and
Yeah.
that's the incentive for people that can't, we got rid of the multi-sibling
Yep.
discount.
And you
I
said it
would
makes
keep
your
it.
life easier to try to incentivize.
Yeah,
or
it
if
does.
people take
I mean,
advantage of
it definitely helps. I mean, from the registration study that I passed out at the last meeting, I think, where, was that upstairs, the last one? We had about 45% of our Little League and T-ball registrants were early.
Could you save money by making all of the T-ball colors the same instead of trying to?
I don't think the color of the shirts has any difference. It's still the same price.
I think orange costs more.
Well, no, he's got like some yellow,
Just a
some red,
giant
some
suit.
green,
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
blue. If you just
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
1,000 black and you're good for the next 10 years, like,
Yeah.
what, could you get a really good discount?
Well,
Kinda.
I mean, you could. I mean, if you wanted to order that many and store them, I mean, I suppose you
Well, yeah, I
suppose
know
you
you guys are
could.
tight on
Um,
storage space, but you know that there's going to be youth small,
Yes.
you know, for
Well, and I-
ever and ever, amen.
And I think another thing too, I mean, that's not factored into this, if you look at the uniform line, you talk about the early bird and the deadlines, that's roughly the amount of money that was purchased in additional uniforms, like 2 for one team, 2 for another, especially where the
To
sponsor
get
did.
used.
Because the thought that, oh, we're gonna close registration, but online, but there's always gonna be somebody else that's registering late. And so you can't just order one uniform
Right.
at a time. You have a minimum that you have to meet. So now we're also, not only do we potentially lose money the way, because of our registration fee, we're losing money because we have to do that. And we're not necessarily always getting those late registrants to come in. Well, Nick and I had kind of thought that we're done kind of doing that. But when I talked with Dwight, he's like, should we actually go? He asked if we had ever done a late fee.
I was gonna say late fee then.
And I told him that 2 years ago, we tried that. And that was a meeting that, I think the one meeting I've missed since I've been hired. And we had a couple citizens show up and they complained about the fee increase and the late registration. And it kind of got spinned back the other way. I think
Can you do one shirt? Can you order one shirt
I could ask how much it's gonna be.
and then pass that cost directly along
I
to
mean,
the
you'd-
late registrant? And
Yeah, I mean,
and
you're
say-
probably looking at, probably 40, 50, 60 bucks. I mean, they're gonna charge you a lot of money to do one uniform. Because they have to set up the screen and everything, and it's inconvenient to them.
But if you end up with a couple extras, if you buy a couple of extras and then nobody uses them that year, you got those in storage for future years, you have a
So-
couple of spares.
So Dwight was, talking about, well, maybe whatever you think your deadline should be, move that up a week, so that way you have enough time to plan, and you kind of have you don't really advertise it, but maybe by me saying it on right now, you've got that week, and if it comes in after that deadline, then, it's late, and you've already started your planning, and there needs to be a,
So why do we allow any entrance after the deadline anyways? I mean, because there's always, I've seen coaches with the team, they get it all planned out and one more
Because
kid,
it's not the kid's fault.
oh, it's the family's
You don't
fault.
want to, you don't want to
Feel
punish
bad
the
and you don't wanna
kid
exclude
for.
anybody because their parents suck. Let's be honest.
Yeah, but you think about it, it throws the team out of whack too, like, we've had basketball situations, we had one team, now you're thinking about two, or, you had, the opposite, it's just, anyway, it's,
you're right, it does kind of change your planning depending on how many you get. We had, going back to our let's go to soccer, we had late registrants right up until like 2 days before the season started. Luckily, we actually did order extra, and they did get used, but that's, like I said, that's not always the case. So, you know, we could go a couple of different ways, you know, like Katie, you mentioned, find out what the cost of a uniform is, and if the place will print one, and that gets passed off 100% to the consumer. Or you put in your uniform order, and then once that's done, you know, that's it.
Or you just pass on that extra cost, so if it already costs $25, you know, if that's baked into the registration fee, then whatever it costs them to set up the screen print, they would just have to pay that extra cost.
Or I'm sure if you're picking navy blue, that there is some, you know, we've played against teams where the kids got a navy blue t-shirt with like white
Yeah.
duct tape on the back for a number. I mean,
Yeah.
if it.
Or could you do it with just without the sponsor on it?
Yeah.
If that's what takes the most cost, is to set that up.
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, all our uniforms also have numbers on them too, but I mean, we could still do
You have
that.
to, right, for baseball? No?
Well, I've actually was wondering about, you know, single A, if you need numbers for that, or maybe even 8U. I don't know, Tom, you would maybe know better than I would.
Yeah, nobody is actually regulating 8U, as
Right.
far as that, you know, I mean,
Right, so I'm thinking single A and 8U, they're about the same age level for their respective sports. You might be able to save a little bit there. But then starting at double A and 10U, probably, you want to start going to numbers. And going back to the uniforms, another thing I asked our vendor was, typically our two colors have been navy and red. And in doing so, you have to get a different color pair of socks, and the socks come in packs of 12. And that's the only way they come, so you have to, so sometimes you might have a team, I think you got a team of 8, so, you gotta spend 4 extra, you know, get 4 extra socks, that's $16 total for the 4. Could we do like a navy uniform and then a gray uniform with navy print, and then just get all navy socks?
Yep.
And he said that would definitely save you a little bit in that capacity as well, so.
Or could you just get one color total? Like, why would you need to do navy and red?
In case the two teams play each other. So that would be the
How
only,
often does that happen?
so I'm trying to think. It's happened at least at one level every year on both sides, so you're two different sets.
But you don't coordinate with like Nottingham and Candia to know what, like they could have navy?
Oh, yeah, no,
So
we don't,
I mean,
yeah, that's true.
I would just go with one color, if that's gonna save cost.
Yeah, it's all trying to get the socks to match.
Can you buy socks at Walmart?
I mean, maybe, I don't know.
Pretty standard,
I don't know if they have like your baseball style or soccer style socks, but,
Oh, yeah, they
Yeah.
got, just,
You could probably get them on
Vietnam.
Amazon.
yeah, I mean, that's another place you could look to see if you can do a cost savings there too.
beat up your vendor for a discount.
Yeah.
To make him sharpen his pencil.
Yep.
So it seems like Kevin's got a grip on this, and he's
Yeah, I think-
aware
yeah.
of places might say, do we want to make a motion then to say to keep the fees the same for this year, and just, and charge them with finding the whatever cost savings they can?
Do you feel strongly against that?
No, I mean, I'm game to do whatever.
Do you want a price increase?
I don't know if the price, how do I put, I don't think the price increase is gonna solve the problem
Okay.
completely by itself.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's necessarily worth it, except it would just, it'd be worth it in the
Lessen the
sense that you would stop a little bit of the bleeding, but, I mean, that's like a Band-Aid on a wound right now, you
Yep.
know?
Yeah.
So maybe until you know, like Jeff said, maybe until you know how's that warrant article gonna pass, is that gonna be something that could potentially be yearly? You don't know, but then again, could we be right back in the same situation next year where the warrant article gets passed this year, so then it gets tried to be put into the budget, right? But then you're still waiting, you gotta launch registration before you know if the budget passes. So it's an unfortunate timeline for us with trying to figure this out.
But we think we'll be okay, because you're gonna have, over time, we're gonna have corrections or boosts, hopefully, that will
Right.
get us back you know, if it's 9,000 this year, it'll be or it's 4,000 this year and
Yeah.
9,000 next year, you know, it's still 13
Right.
versus 18.
Right. And you know what, if our number of participants rises, you know, that might help as well, because now the cost is shared across a greater body.
Yeah, I'd be curious how many of a bump you're gonna get out of that T-ball program
Right.
into the higher registration costs, because there was a lot of T-ballers.
There were, so this 35, like I said, that was an average, so I know last year we actually had well more than 35, I think we were at least at 40. I mean, we had to do 2 different sessions,
Yeah.
so,
You're not gonna lose a lot of balls there.
nope.
All right, so does someone want to make that motion?
I'll make that motion to keep the existing cost structure in place, with the caveat that any cost savings that can be realized should be taken advantage of. Within reason, again, you know, you gotta get some kind of uniform, you can't, you know,
Right.
white t-shirts are not uniforms.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Yeah, real quick, I think I mentioned before, instead of visors for the girls this year, I know this is a side note, but can we do those headbands?
Yes, and actually, that was one of the things that the vendor
Yeah.
mentioned, is that if we do go to put the sponsors on the hats themselves, they can still put the sponsors on the headbands. They've already been doing them for other leagues like
Yeah, so
that.
with those face masks, the girls
Yep.
never had the ability to even wear them.
Yep,
It
yep,
worked out well.
yep.
What
So,
is the cost for an adult softball team sponsorship? I've been asked that, and I guess $250. How far off was I?
I think it was right about there.
yeah, I think we use the same cost structure for softball as we did for baseball, softball. So I think it's $250 for a banner sponsor. And if you have already sponsored and we have your banner, subtract $100. If you want to do a team sponsorship, it's $250. If you want to do the Grand Slam, which is both, I think it's, what is it? It's what is it? It's 475, I think, for the first time, maybe. And then subtract 100 for the banner. I'd have to double check. We've got the printout.
Okay.
We've got the information down there.
Okay.
So I hope I didn't misspeak and then somebody's gonna hold me
No,
to
I
the
don't
iron.
think it's that important. Someone was just asking, and I was guessing.
Yep,
Okay.
so you're pretty close.
Deerfield Hoops Classic.
All right, so, let me see here, try to make this one quick. All right, so, I don't know how many know, but I know Nate has been on some emails as well as Brian, right? The dates for the Hoop Classic have changed
I think
due,
you sent it to all of us, didn't you?
Nick did, okay.
Yeah, he
Someone
said
did.
it.
Yeah.
Okay. The dates for the Hoop Classic have changed. We found out after registration had launched that a solid portion of the number of teams that play in our tournament, their league playoffs were during the first week, and there was gonna be a lot of conflicts. And it was a pretty high percentage of number of teams, that it was concerning to know whether or not we would be able to fill those spots with other surrounding towns if they decided that it was too much of a risk to spend the money and not be able to play, or they can't make a game and they have to forfeit out. You know, nobody wants to see that happen. So the decision was made to move it back to start on Monday, March 16th, and it will run through Sunday, April 5th, if necessary. The goal is to be completely done by actually April 4th, which would be all our championship games on that Saturday. But should weather come, we want to advertise that Sunday. And then since the move and the date, the number of teams that we have committed has increased. We've got a kind of a rough printout here. We're sitting around 30 teams committed right now. Last year we had about 40. So we want to definitely try to reach that 40 and try to actually go by that and get closer to the 46 teams we had 2 years ago. So,
Now, did any of those teams that were registered have to back out? Because of
As of right now, from what I've, talking with Nick before today, he's not heard of that happening. So that everybody,
aware?
yes, so as far as I know, everybody that did sign up early, that had potentially already made a payment, has been made aware and had not had a issue with the date change, as of right now.
Is the school good with the date change?
Yep, that was the first thing we did, was contact the school to make sure that they could, be okay with the date change before we, went forward in doing so. Because obviously if they weren't, we were gonna have to stick with, potentially the timeline that we were, and I guess see what we could do to get additional teams. The only change is that there's one Saturday in the new date range that's a blackout date from the schools. Saturday, March 28th is the only day that we can't hold games, but everything else is open for us to use. As well as the new times of the games. I don't know how many people are aware of this. We had some, not necessarily complaints, but suggestions on the game times. So now Monday through Thursday, games are only going to be at 5, 6, and 7, no longer an 8 o'clock game. Friday night, we'll have 5, 6, 7, and 8 as we're heading into the weekend. Saturday's first game will be at 8, and the last game will be at 8, so we'll have a total of 13 on a Saturday. And then on Sunday, we'll again start at 8, with the last game being at 7. So we'll try to get
School night.
yeah, the kids and families home earlier by doing so, and in doing so, it does extend the length of the tournament, the number of days that you might need a little bit, but it's, I think, a positive change.
Are the droves of volunteers okay with the date change?
I
I don't know.
don't know.
Are we?
You guys are the volunteers right now, so,
Yeah, I was gonna make that, mention that. I don't know how you're planning to
Mhm.
slot it out, but earlier is better.
yeah. And so, talking about that, the 8th grade already knows of the date change as well. I made sure to let them know. So echoing the sign up, Nick was curious on whether or not we wanted to go with the Sign Up Genius again. He wasn't around for last year's tournament, but before he had to step away, he didn't know if it was actually signed up in the manner or the volume that we had hoped by doing it online, or if there's a different avenue we want to explore, as well as how do we get those volunteers?
I mean, that you have to hit social media right away.
Yep,
Like,
yep.
I think
thought
I
the
like the
Sign Up
sign up
Genius
genius.
was
Yeah, because you could go on and look, and I knew
Yeah.
that.
yeah,
you know.
I think another thing that's gonna be in our corner this year, which we didn't have, is that constant contact. So that way we can send it out to everybody, with a link, as
Is that
opposed.
a subscription, or is it per use that you
The
pay?
what?
Constant Contact?
It's per month. So it's about $45 a month.
And
Right, side
they
road.
blast anybody you want them to?
Yeah, so we go in and we build what's called a campaign, and we have an address or contact list that's going, and we build our groups, and you just put whoever you want to be sent to, and it'll go. And it will track how many people opened it, how many people opened it on their desktop versus their mobile phone, how many bounced, how many couldn't be delivered, so to speak. So you kind of get stats on it as well.
so that's like a text message notification?
It's an email, right to your whatever email address. And another thing that you can do is if you provide a link, say to Sign Up Genius, say we send it out to everybody that is a parent of a basketball player right now, and then we put a link to Sign Up Genius, we can create another group that tracks everybody that clicks on it. So, and it can build up another email grouping that way.
How do you get the list from Rec?
Yeah, we pull
Rec
email
Desk?
addresses from RecDesk, and then you import them via a spreadsheet, and it stores them.
That's what we were looking at last year, it was just we had a different vendor. that
Something
was-
with a text ability, though,
Yeah, I don't think this has
Ask.
text capability, though.
so that when you're at the field, if something's changed.
You don't
can
have
get
email on your phone?
Well, you do, but it doesn't
Nobody ever
always
looks at
come
it
through.
there.
Yeah.
It just doesn't always come through.
Emails get deleted. right
Yeah,
away.
it's very evident sometimes, emails,
Look at
swipe
them all.
left.
Yeah.
No choice.
Yeah, I would just say earlier, hit it early. I would say keep Sign Up Genius.
Okay.
And probably before the season ends, which is next week, right, the basketball season?
Yeah, the 15th.
Yeah.
Right, next.
Yeah, I know, we've had a few that have said their season will end on the 15th.
Mhm.
So I don't know if you're gonna be blasting for them as well. The communication to our team was that volunteering is a mandatory piece of their participation.
Mhm. Oh, that's, I'm glad to hear that. So yeah, I think at that point, you know, echoing what you just said about some families and players may choose to end their regular season, the end of, you know, on the last day of games. I think we'll have to reach out to the coaches, or, you know, hopefully coaches will reach out to us if, you know, a team of 10 now is a team of 5 because of that. Because we'll have to figure out what to do if that happens. Because I don't know if you want to go into a tournament with only 5 players. You know, you're an injury or a foul out situation away from only having 4 players. So,
So can I just ask a question? How come we're starting on Monday versus the weekend? You know, in the years past, we started on the weekend. You get that whole like vibe of everyone's there. And
yeah, we were, I guess, trying to just kind of get things started as soon as we could at the end of the other conflicts that we knew of, as well as with losing Saturday, March 28th, we needed to find a way to make up 13 games, as well as try to still end on that weekend in April, because the following weekend is Easter weekend. So we wanted to make sure we ended that weekend, and we need to find a way to make up those games that couldn't be played on that Saturday. So we had to kind of move the timeline forward, instead of starting, like you say, on that Saturday or, say, the Friday before.
What's going on the 28th?
I'm not really sure. All I know is that it's a blackout date at the school. Then there's setup involved in the gym, so they need to be able to get in there on Saturday morning, I guess. So.
So we don't need a motion or anything for this, right? It's just, it is what it is, and we're, nothing about fees or,
I mean, we could talk
Volunteer.
about how
Volunteer.
do we go about making, it seems like the annual discussion about the fee versus the volunteerism.
I know, that's what, I've gotten a lot of feedback that it's a tournament that's a little out of the reach of Deerfield rec basketball. And so I wonder if you're better to take paying, but you're not turning away any paying teams, right? In your current structure?
Not until we reach 48.
You've never turned away someone who's paying a full boat. You've just.
No, because we haven't reached the 48 teams. The most teams at our tournament can reasonably hold and still function is 48 teams. Because our goal is 6 divisions with 8 teams, that's the goal. But if you have, say, 2 additional teams and, I don't know, 3, 4 boys, so that one's at 10 and then maybe another one's at 6, you know. As long as you're at 48, you can, but we haven't reached that.
Right, okay. My feedback was gonna be if you are turning away someone who's paying the fee
Yep.
to allow a slot for a Deerfield team that may be,
Mhm.
2 games and out,
yeah,
pretty much.
it's 2 games and out. So
Yeah.
it's hard to get enthusiastic to volunteer for somewhere where you kinda get spanked.
that's the good thing about having it on the weekend is typically our teams play on that weekend and then they're done. So you can volunteer and you can be there and then, you know.
And the one thing I would say about the Sign Up Genius, last year, I think you guys put like a number that, so-and-so hours required for each family.
Mhm.
I wouldn't do that again.
Mhm.
I'd let them let the coaches maybe talk and say, we need you for, a few games or whatnot, but
Right.
I wouldn't put because I think Nick had
Scared
like
some people away.
40 hours or something like that he wanted.
Because that's what the
People
math,
to
we
work.
did all the math last year,
Yeah,
and that's what
but
it broke
that's-
down to.
That scared a lot of people
Right.
away. And didn't really, that left, I know Tom was there, I was there. I think everyone was here for the most part,
there's like 2 games. Not
way
that
over
long,
that,
I
but,
did a couple.
because the
feeling.
other families just didn't.
Yeah.
I think you and I were there every single day from open.
You live
place.
there.
So,
So, yeah.
yeah,
I should have
Saw
put a
the
cot
food
on the
going
stage.
in.
yeah, it was like, I see my family like high five and, all right, see you in 2 weeks. But that's the only thing, I would not put that number on there, just kind of let them volunteer for what they can, and then we'll kind of have to go
Make it
from
happen.
there.
Right.
But that's the only thing
Okay.
I would not do.
There was, I know there was some desire at the 3-4 level to try to make a stronger team between the two rec teams, and that was maybe frowned upon? If- I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah,
I don't know, is that the only level that has two teams? The only age level that has two teams?
no, 5-6 boys has 2 teams.
And have you gotten any of that same feedback for that level?
No,
No, okay.
not yet. At
Okay.
least not yet. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a tournament where you are eliminated when you lose. So the
a
goal is to
competitive
win,
tournament,
and
right.
you want to go into that tournament with your strongest chance of winning. So that's the,
I mean, you're playing travel teams, you're playing competitive teams.
it's, we've participated in round robins where everybody plays, and that's different than an elimination tournament.
Right.
So that's,
I mean, how I typically roll it out to my parents, like this year I have 14 girls. So I'm gonna let them all know we have a big tournament coming up, because a lot of the third graders, they have no idea what it is. I'm just gonna let them know that it's a
Awesome
big,
experience.
very competitive tournament. It's outside of the rec season.
You might not
So
get equal playing time.
your girls, exactly, your girls are more than welcome to, come to practices and participate, but it's not gonna be equal playing time. Some girls might not play at all, if it's a close game. I mean, if we're getting blown out or vice versa, absolutely, I'll do my best to get people in, but it's not
it's
gonna
a
be.
different vibe.
Like, right now, I roll out, every 3 minutes, we get a new line of 5 people, so it's hard for them to get a groove and, play an actual game.
The
but-
kids still like it though, because they got all those practices in advance, if
Oh,
they
yeah.
can, and they're just pumped, and if they
I think
lose, they
they
go
like,
home
the
and they're.
music and the lights at the
Yeah.
beginning, and just the whole vibe of it is, I think,
Yeah.
what they like the most.
Yeah.
And they're
Absolutely.
never ashamed, they go home, they are in the classic, they got a
No, it's
t-shirt.
more the parents, absolutely. Absolutely.
Parents again, the same ones that are.
Mhm.
wait, wait, show you.
Yeah, exactly, those are your people.
Well, no, and I
So-
mean, I mentioned that to Nick, is that how many parents out there want to make sure their kid gets to practice and does 2 practices a week and then goes to games, an extra 3 weeks or 4 weeks, however long it is, until this Coop Classic is started and gone through. Some parents, like you say, they'd just rather, oh, no, you're done.
Mhm.
And that's fine.
Yep.
Yep. Any other new business? Anyone have?
Maybe old business, but, and you mentioned in an email, the $300 and the Joe Stone
Yes.
versus the new line item. So I do want to say one thing that, in advance, we don't have it defined now, but one of the things I haven't been comfortable with since I've been on this commission is that we sit and we make a decision, we vote, we do something. And then afterwards, we get some follow-up emails, well, what, we didn't consider this, or what about that, or this and that. And then it just kind of moves in a different direction and it gets lost. So we did make a motion last time, although I forgot to look at the minutes and I wasn't here,
Create a new line.
to create a new
Yeah.
line item. And that would serve for scholarships in these Parks and Rec programs. And the Joe Stone would be more exclusively used for high schoolers going on to higher education. So if you guys discovered something that was, information about that, I know there was some conversations earlier to say, the fund was created to do this. But if it wasn't binding, if it's not like a trust, or it's like, like our bylaws are sort of binding now, we have to go out of our way to change them, but we can change them. So the same thing with the Joe Stone, if somebody said, hey, let's do this for this purpose, and we did, and it moved it to this direction, that's fine, but that money's been spent, whatever was donated in the beginning is gone, and we've moved on. So I'm just hoping as we move forward that something like that happens is, we come back and we say, we say we didn't do something because we found some major obstacle. But in a case like this, wouldn't it have been, make more sense to have that line item created, and the $300 was supposed to go to that line item, right, for kid scholarships, not high school scholarships. That's my one whine for the process. So, where is it? Again,
Sitting on Deb's
what are we
desk.
gonna do with it? What's that?
It's sitting on Deb's desk, waiting for.
Okay, for the line to apply it to.
Yeah.
And then the next thing is, can we avoid that? You know, we're not supposed to conduct business by email, and it's not a matter of, the same thing, and I'm gonna go on record saying this. If you send an email to all of us and you get it individually, that's worse, okay? Because you're polling us and there's no discussion, there's nothing out in the open. So if you are gonna ask for our opinion, ask everybody, and let's call it a meeting then, you know, via email perhaps, but or postpone it to the next. And again, no, Kevin, I know it's not you, so I'm not saying that, but I'm just going on record kind of that we gotta tighten that up a little bit, and because we get real money, and maybe you were very generous and you thought you could go whichever it benefited most, but somebody else might say, I watch these guys, and these kids need some money, they can't participate in these programs, I can't come to the after-school, can't afford the $1,700, and they may write a check and want it to go to a certain place. So, you know, that'd be great if that happens, but, so, anyways, that's what I said. So what do we do? You know, what do we do with the line item versus Joe Stone? Do we create a definition? And the last thing I'm gonna say, what I liked about our decision was, we were showing interest and initiative on two fronts. Help the high school kids and help the kids that might need a hand getting on a baseball team. So, but by putting that and identifying it into the budget and then funding it, that is showing our support, and it also, as we then cycle out and come in 5 years from now, they may say, what's Joe Stone for? Well, this is the money here, and we've seen it, and we've seen the payouts, and this is the money that went somewhere else.
So exactly what you said just sparked something in my head. We had said to make a line item for youth, for scholarships for children who might not otherwise be able to afford it. And in talking to Deb, she said in her 10 years here, there's never been maybe 2 situations. So I was thinking, well, that's not gonna be great if we put this money and it just sits there and collects dust and no one ever takes advantage of it. But earlier you were talking about the cost of buying a glove or buying pants. And so, like, maybe it seems like our intent was to be able to help people participate in our programs. So if that line item could also be used for the purchase of a glove or the purchase of I don't know, like whatever else you need. But I think the Joe Stone scholarship line, we have two schools of thought. You felt pretty strongly that it's for high school, going into college scholarships, and it seems like Nick and Deb are feeling like the language is a little more broad. So it's never been used broadly, but, so I don't know where we're at in terms
I
of.
think in the first year or two, I think Deb found some language that there were 7 or 8 registration scholarships that were given out. So
Oh,
she
see,
had,
she told me today only 2 in her 10 years.
I don't know, she had some language for it, so I don't know.
But if it doesn't exist and you don't know about it, then you may not ask.
So it sounds like the Joe Stone, to me, there is nothing that is set in stone. But would you disagree with that statement?
Well, I don't know, I'd have to look back and see if we could find it in writing, but I don't know that there is anything in writing that says specific.
This is what it can be used for, this is what it cannot be used for.
But we also, you know, we moved it out of the 80 fund for a purpose, so it wouldn't be used for anything else. I mean, it was in the revolving account.
Okay, and it came
We
out,
pulled it out of the revolving account, put its own,
so that slush in between the lines wouldn't happen?
you wouldn't use it for anything else other than the scholarship. That was pretty much the intent, to get it out of there, not being used for the other programs. But maybe we have to put something in the bylaws that specifies what the Joel Stone Scholarship is for.
Yeah, and I believe Nick has been working with Denny on his
Policy.
scholarship policy as well as an application.
Yep.
So, you know, maybe,
So when I started to help him with that as I was writing it, I thought, well, why youth? Like, why couldn't a senior want to do yoga and take advantage of this? Like, it felt like it needed some more baking in
Yeah,
the,
It's almost Parks and Recreation.
Any program.
Anything.
So, I apologize, we're dealing with snow in the morning here, at school and stuff, so. Off the record, Concord's going with a delay in the morning.
That's very on the record right now.
Letting folks know tonight.
It won't
so.
get on YouTube till next.
Right, yeah, after, if they don't, it'll be mud. No, it just went out. So maybe we need to discuss this further, and I guess part of the process, though, is we had a meeting, we all sat down as a group, and we advised you to move in this direction. And we, how we hold your feet to the fire, whatever, but we're, the body said to do this, and if you don't do it, you should let us know kind of why, out of respect in the process. So that's the thing, maybe, if you do say, hey, wait, we gotta come back. But you had a discussion with Deb, and Nick sent an email, and all these people have done this, and it's diluting our work here to think thoughtfully and debate respectfully, and to take information from constituents that might say, hey, this is how I feel about this. Not that we're elected officials, but we do talk to people. So that, I think that's important, that if we do something, or whatever we voted on today, the fees, and Nick comes back and says, no, we're gonna raise the fees, we don't need to call an emergency meeting, but we need to note that. We need to say, he's going in a different direction because, and we should justify it, we should come back and be satisfied, meaning, does anyone disagree with that?
You can't do any business on email,
Right.
period. So what you're saying is if Katie sends out a group email asking everybody's opinion, then nobody can answer it.
Isn't that that's the thing. I mean, otherwise, why come in here and sit here and have the discussion? Just put us on the email list, and we'll, say yes, no to whatever questions come up. I'm not saying we shouldn't, right, I'm saying we shouldn't do business by email, but we seem to be doing by business by email after the group. It's in the record. We said, create a line item.
Yeah, I don't recall what that last communication from Nick with the Joe Stone, I don't remember
If
if he was
I
just giving
recall
us
it
more
was-
information, or was he?
they didn't want to create another,
Yeah, there was another
Line
part of
item.
that. They were married to some degree. I'd have to find the email.
So I think we need to continue the conversation, and
Right, which is fine at the
Yep.
next meeting,
Right.
perhaps.
Yeah.
That's my point, is that we true to the process, that,
Yeah.
just bring it back and say we can't do that, or we shouldn't, because,
we still need to think some more about it.
so maybe we didn't have, we might have made the decision, but maybe we didn't have all the facts, so maybe once additional facts are known, then you come back and we have to revisit that decision with
and,
The new
and
information.
so it should end up on the next agenda.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's gotta be a way to,
Keep moving forward without.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So that $300 will continue to just sort of sit, and we'll discuss a home for it in March? Is that?
where else will we put it, Jeff, then?
I would, if it was me personally, I would put it in the Joe Stone College Scholarship Fund, and that, because we know that that's a scholarship that gets awarded every year, and it's got a history, and it's going, but we talked at the last meeting about having more of a program-based line, but
But do we need that? We've always said that we wouldn't
it's
turn
sounding like
someone
we
away.
don't need that, but
You
I
know.
like the idea of it, if it were needed.
I think the other thing too, I think Deb might have mentioned to you, is I'm not really sure how many people even know that that we're willing to do a scholarship for a registration fee, or if there's a hardship. So I think that's part of why Nick has been working with Denny, so that way we have the application and the policy and the wording, and we can now publicize that to, people that might need it. So maybe, like you're saying, maybe right now we're not
Don't have the
set up
structure.
100%
Yeah.
right now for that. But I mean, are you gonna keep that, you can't keep that check in the, in a lockbox until that's ready, and depending on how long that takes,
Right.
I don't know.
So if you do that, where does the money come from? If you decide to have someone, just a free baseball admission?
She said in the past that it's just been absorbed within the revolving fund. But she said, again, it was very minimal.
So we could continue to do that. I mean, I guess the thing is, we could even vote now and say, okay, you know, we're not gonna create a line item, and we're gonna, any new funds would go to the Joe Stone. I mean, we can do that. I'm just saying, don't, you know,
I like the idea of having, I don't know.
no, go ahead, I mean,
Could you put it in the Joe Stone fund and line item so that it's there and it's separate, and then have this policy written and communicated so that people know it's there, and then when somebody does need it, you can take it from that Joe Stone line and give it to them, so it serves the purpose of having it in its own spot. The only thing is, it's not easily tracked, because it's kind of lumped in with everything else, because we don't know the balance of the Joe Stone Fund at these meetings.
we
can
actually
get
did
it.
for a while, and Dwight, maybe you haven't picked up on that yet, but Dwight was bringing that periodically.
I can
to-
ask Pete for
That
that.
was, it's line 81, isn't it, I think?
I don't know.
I mean, you know, it's not, the account isn't the 80 fund, it's the next, whatever, it's like 81 or something.
I mean, you could always just put it in the Joe Stones, and if then an ask came that we felt like, yes, we want to pay for this child's baseball registration, it would almost be like the Joe Stone
Yeah,
paying
scholarship.
the Parks and Rec for that registration fee.
So we could, and, because Joe Stone is our responsibility in the bylaws, so we can create a definition for Joe Stone, it could be used for this or
Well,
that.
that's like, it's sounding like we need a more firm definition of what Joe Stone is and is not.
You know, and I'm also wondering if within the 80, if it's the 81 fund, could we have two different line items? One for college and one for other?
Needs-based, whatever.
But it still separates it from the thing is, are we gonna just absorb it, or are we gonna actually have funds available to offset that cost and say, one free kid, $105 baseball, take it out of the fund? And then what do you do if you don't have any money in that fund to do that? So I'm kind of, you know, going along with the flow here, the thinking is good and all of that. Do we wanna just have Joe Stone be for high school and absorb these? The important thing to me is that families that might not have the means understand there's an opportunity to make a request. And if you have a policy and a procedure, and you have a form, and it's advertised, and people know that, or in any rec desk thing is scholarships available to, you know, to qualified families, you know, that, something like that, then people know and aware so that they can be included. That's why that piece is important to me. I know Dwight can speak for a long time about Joe Stone and all the remarkable things he did over time, and how important, you know, how important it is to maintain that memory and the legacy. So, you know, I'm okay with doing that. So you brought the $300. Do you necessarily want it to be for a scholarship, or do you want, you know, for kids and programs, or do you want to change it and just put it in Joe Stone as it exists?
Well, I think collaboratively, and I agree that I would like it to go to the kids' scholarships. We just need to find a way to do it. So let me work with Pete and see if that's an option.
Which kid's scholarship?
Yes,
needs-based.
The needs-based.
Okay.
Needs-based scholarship, rather than the college scholarship.
Okay. And I respect that as the donor. She's bringing the money, she should have a say.
I agree.
Yeah. So just, you're gonna continue to work on it, but then bring it back here, and then we can,
Well,
we'll know what, at least we'll know what's going on.
I was trying to see if there's another line where it could just hang out for a little bit. I just don't like the idea of it sitting on a desk
So you can put it in the Joe Stone Scholarship and move it out
later.
at a later date if you want to, right? I mean, nothing says you can't move money out of it.
So why can't we create a line item here? Is Pete saying that we're not able to?
Well, no, I think it was that fundamental sort of, not everybody was in harmony about, is Joe Stone only for college scholarships, or is it for more? So if we're gonna say Joe Stone is only for college scholarships, then we need to create a new line item here
Yeah.
for youth, or for, I keep saying youth, but for needs-based
I think
aid, or whatever you call it, and then leave Joe out of it.
Yeah.
So I think the motion we made last month was to add another line item here.
Here.
We want it in the revolving fund? I would think you'd
Yeah.
want it separate from the revolving fund,
No, it's,
I
it's
think-
an
I
ad.
thought we voted to create a new
like an 82.
line, yeah, not in the 80
Oh,
fund. I
like
thought
a
that's
whole
what we
separate
voted,
fund.
Yeah.
I didn't get,
That was another line there.
but- Was it?
yeah. The idea is if it's gonna offset costs, sorry.
They
If it's
weren't
gonna,
very detailed.
if it's gonna offset costs, it's gonna be revenue, you should put it in the fund that it's gonna serve. I mean, if you have it on the side, Joe Stone, it doesn't come, it's not used for fill on fields of baseball bats, it's used for kids going to college, so the money in, money out. If we're gonna have money to offset the youth baseball or whatever, we're using revenue from other fields now, that'd be the logical place to have it, wouldn't it? To have revenue there, and then you can see it, and that way it'd be utilized. And it would carry forward, just like all these other accounts indefinitely.
So you're saying it would be a line item, whatever number, here,
99 or something.
Yeah.
101.
yeah, in the 80 fund.
In the 80, that's what I thought we had talked about, and I thought that was what Jeff was seeking when he brought I thought you originated that idea, didn't you, Jeff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember there being an email on this, and I can't find it right now, but,
This one?
yeah. But didn't it say something about the,
So it says Kevin found the verbiage.
but
What?
wasn't there something
Brochure.
from that
Oh.
Pete didn't want to do something, or,
I thought Deb said she found it.
no, I could be wrong.
Well, maybe, like you said, maybe we don't know all the moving parts, so maybe like if you put those two options to Pete or to whomever and said, what's the better, here's what we want to accomplish, should it go in the 80 fund or should it be a new separate? Like, I would think that something pretty elaborate must have happened to set up the Joe Stone. It must be a 503C, I would think. Right? Right? If someone donates, or maybe because we've always fundraised.
Yeah.
If I donate $1,000 to the Joe Stone, is that a
I
charitable?
think you can as a town,
I think you can donate, like, my money came to Parks and Rec, you can do that as long as it's like a town or 501c3, something like that.
So maybe the question to Pete is establishing a new 82 line the better way to do it, or should it just be a new line item in the 80 fund?
He would be the best to ask, right? I mean, he's
Yeah,
the
I think.
money guy, so. So, I mean, do we do that, but not just go ahead and do it, but then come back here and say, this is what we're doing with it?
This is what we found, and, yeah.
but it sounds like there's two examples here of emails that say the fund also covered the cost of 8 family hardship cases so that they could participate in various recreational programs. Plus, there were 2 scholarships given.
The
And that
Joe
was through
Stone
Joe
fund.
Stone, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the first, I think, fundraisers we did. We had Tim Sample and this
There's
says,
an old name.
How old's that?
it's not that, 2012.
You found an email just now from 2012 on your
No,
phone?
this is what Nick sent us all.
Yeah,
Okay.
Nick had, that's what, so we made the
Okay.
motion in last meeting, and then I think
Right.
Nick had.
Yeah, it says
some
this
circle
fund
back.
provides scholarships to families in Deerfield so that any family who cannot afford to pay for youth recreational sports will not miss the chance to play. Well, that's in the write-up for the fundraiser we did. I still don't know that there's actual verbiage for what the Joe Stone Scholarship's supposed to be for.
You would think it would be on the application, right, or there must
But-
be descriptions.
Yeah, but I guess
Probably is that.
it goes back to all the good record-keeping that we've found in the past, so.
Speaking of, we need a new recording secretary, if anyone's interested. You should contact John Harrington. All right, so we want to check with Pete,
Yeah.
and
follow
we'll
up,
bring
it
this back up next month. Anything else? Old business, unfinished business?
New business.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned.
You didn't ask for the citizens' comments.
Yeah, you want anything?
You wanna go, she wants
So-
dinner is what
I
she wants
know,
over
me
better.
too.
According to I wanted, she brought up literally everything we talked about last night.
Oh,
And it was perfect.
YouTube,
You
she'd
give
be
them a
there for
tablet,
7 hours.
they'll stay there for hours.
If we had to ask her
I
the
didn't-
color.
Yeah, I know. Read.
Totally, go head first into that.
They were
But
watching
based on our conversation, I didn't-
45 minutes
I
yesterday.
didn't wanna
These
do that
kids
on
filled-
camera.
You know those Orbeez? The little,
Yeah.
they filled this.
I-
Well,
that's
no,
why
no,
I
no.
spoke on it, because I
Inflatable
was like,
swimming
it's.
Well, no,
Orbeez,
about-
and the 3 grown men were just like
But I-
floating around.
I didn't wanna be
and
like,
doing all
hey,
these
I
things.
agree
They
with
were saying
you,
they're watching.
or I think that there
Raw.
needs to be
They
a
couldn't
change.
Look away.
Sit there and watch kids like play video
Because,
games.
like I told you, I
build
think-
Legos.
Yeah, they don't watch
Something
like
that-
shows anymore. Like
Okay.
you used to
They're
have
doing
a,
that. Why are you watching
like a
another
show
kid
with a
do it?
storyline
Happen
and a
like
moral.
three
They don't
Yeah.
watch, they don't
So
watch
it's
it.
all,
I,
it's all Deerfield people.
So
that-
2-hour delays, you think it'll go the
Like,
whole
I
day?
glad, yeah.
Yeah, which I knew, you kind of looked at me. I was like, I wasn't gonna say it, but I'm
stay
like,
cold
no,
all
I
day?
have to, because she's absolutely right.
Actual organizers, but like,
That
Dwight was saying they used to do it
He's
during
hearing
the
it from her,
and
from
Friday
us.
was.
Right.
4-day week.
Right.
Yep.
He's not.
I know the YMCA came in and was
We
doing.
got the notice at work that the ice won't be.
Yeah,
enough
I'm
to
not
cause
sure
power
who it is,
outages.
except
So people are like,
Go up, it's us, the Langhorns.
Babe Ruth.
D'Agostino's, Kelly, you know, it's all that age.
So, I actually probably should have mentioned that on,
5:30, pay for a lesson.
on the camera
How
was,
they wanna do the rate hike because.
I wanna say.
so what's making
$100 and
also
then I get
baseball
passes that go with it.
Babe Ruth this year is that Lamprey River
But I'm thinking, but if there's
is
no
now
rate,
looking
you're
to
not
launch
getting
an
money
intermediate level,
all over.
57.
Yeah, I was just wondering.
So they're pitching to 50, so in front of the field and Candy and there's another one in
Teacher or
Auburn.
somebody, or if it's just.
So,
I can't tell you who starts it, but
John
it's.
Tabasco, I don't know if
It's
you
like,
know,
like we get chaperone
he
passes on our
has,
when it goes
I think there's a link out there, I gotta find an email, I think there's one out there that,
It's nice
I
to
think you can sign up, if not now, soon, you're getting information ready.
They definitely played it a lot. in
I've got a meeting
when I was a
on next
kid.
Monday, so I can find out more,
Yeah.
to make sure that everything's ready.
It collapses
I think what he's looking to do
part of
is
left
this rate
side.
case, we
have
were
people
like storm,
sign up.
storm costs.
Manchester 3 or 4.
potentially not pay yet,
Like,
until he knows
Do you know
investment.
how many people
Cannon?
are
Plays
interested.
soccer here.
On top of that, with the understanding that you're gonna be
That
traveling
was
to
his
Candia
sister.
and
I didn't
or
even realize this till
Auburn
last night walking to the hospital.
for practices and for games.
She got stabbed so
And I think the
hard.
goal
Under,
would
like,
be
kind
to
of
have a
back
team
from
in Candia
So is
and
the
in
company
Auburn.
as a whole?
Would there be a Babe Ruth
Yeah.
on that?
Yeah, we're allowed.
Not on the smaller field, so what we're,
Babe Ruth all big field?
yeah, Babe Ruth is 60-90. Yeah, so the catch to that is, like Nick and I have been talking that we just barely can field a Babe Ruth team
You
the
know,
past 2
so
years.
then your
And then he
return goes
starts
down
just
again,
punching
take
it.
If
your
you
You
now
see it,
take
gotta catch
away
It's a weird.
those
business.
13-year-olds
Brendan
that are
said he got
eligible,
them both right
I
up
was like,
here.
wait a minute, they're talking about.
that's probably gonna hurt your numbers for Babe
Here's
Ruth.
something about
And if you look at
through
the
rib
numbers,
broke.
that's one of the ones that
And they
has the
actually
highest
still got him under arrest. They caught
odds per player.
a third guy across
Look
the
at the
top.
cost,
So that's when they knew that.
$150
So he has like 3 stitches.
player
basically
if you were
connected to unibrow now.
you know, if you're ever looking to cover the
They walk
cost.
downstairs and Brendan's like.
But
he's
in the
not
same
really
sense,
He's like,
in the
"What
same
hell?
sense,
The
you
hell?"
know,
He's like, I think I got stabbed. And then
whether
Olivia, girl,
intermediate
kinda collapsed.
starts
You
in
don't feel
Lamprey
like cut her
River or
shirt off
not,
real quick.
if there are parents
So our
that don't
medic
want their
guys
kids to
yeah,
go up
she
to
was-
60-90, they will find
Same thing.
other areas.
Were they wearing
Like
masks?
Yeah, but
No, they'll find other places to go anyway,
Oh,
so,
different towns.
yeah, different
Trying to
town,
think
what
like the best
have
way
you,
to explain it,
so.
like it's kinetic
I mean,
energy, right? So a bullet, it catches the bullet,
I'm
but if you just take a
Thinking
nail.
specifically
push
now
a
for
nail,
Connor to figure out
Right.
what to do with him.
Right,
Yeah.
The one that-
That's the way Kevlar
but,
functions, you know, it catches that energy and disperses it.
don't know.
But if you go real slow, or it's, you know, a
don't-
blade, you can cut right through
They,
them unless you
they
catch it,
haven't
you
been real
trauma.
organized at the school
So
lately.
you got them both.
Yeah,
And the other
kind
thing is,
of.
anyways
so you
at that higher
figure,
level.
you wrap it
do you
around,
know who
right, so
the
you don't have
coach
full
is?
coverage up under.
That's
But I figured it was up under.
So it could have just missed entirely. but
Okay,
you
it
can't
is.
go Through those,
So
especially in the
Darren
wings, that's
Hopkins was
why,
kind of a one-year
you know, it
thing.
seemed counterintuitive,
Darren
like you go
Hopkins
through
was
a
a
door, you're
one-year.
supposed to face it, so if they're shooting
Yeah, I
at
know
you,
she was
you
looking,
wanna
kid
take it
graduated,
here.
so-
yeah, cause I know,
That, you get them.
Cindy was looking for somebody,
They were-
last year,
And
And I kinda
surprised
went
they
to
didn't
her and
put
I said,
that
are you
out.
still looking? Because, you know,
victims
Coach G
Our cops.
baseball for years.
Yeah, no, the victim, he's in there smiling.
Uh,
We made him retake a
and,
picture because the
I
kid's
was
smiling
like,
like an
if you're still
asshole, booking
looking,
photo. And the boss was
considering
like,
your season's supposed
that's
to
gonna be on
start
every
like
fucking
in a
news
week,
outlet. I'm like, you
you
make
know,
that
let me
kid
talk
not
to
smile.
Nick, and that's what she told me. You know, that she had
But yeah,
which was fine.
Which
Which was fine.
When you think about the difference too,
but-
like
I wish you guys
what
had
violence,
connected
between
earlier,
stabbing
'cause
somebody and
I'd love
shooting
to-
somebody, it's very easy to
Very
point a
intimate.
gun across the room. But when you're up
The
close,
kind of guy I
you are
respect and would be good
hitting
with
somebody so hard with a knife that he
A lot of
broke her
stuff,
ribs. That kid should
that
fucking died in that room.
gets
But,
lost sometimes.
you know, we live and everything's on a body camera.
Was he on something?
No, just
Yeah,
straight up
I mean,
assassin.
I did,
Yeah, and his brother is, it's not even a case of bad family, his brother's
not
a correctional
finalized yet.
officer at the state.
I think I did
Yeah, he's the
5 or
bad
6 years
kid.
of basketball in high school and then that
Wanna
JV
kill 3
level and
cops.
then, no, 7, because I did 1 year of varsity and then
I know, I almost messaged you, and I was like,
I think 6. I did
I
7
went
basketball,
in.
6 of JV baseball at
I'm
Hopkins.
an old man now too. I
gonna
still
reach
find
out
it
to
best
her
most
to
of the
confirm.
time.
you don't bust down doors anymore?
I'll be out tonight.
I mean, if she's got no one, I mean, I could look into it and then I could try to
That's
find out
it,
if I
yeah.
make it to something that I could feasibly do here. I would like to think that if needed, I've got enough vacation
I have to
time
lie to
sit
Cameron
down and
every night.
everything
She's
built
like,
up.
you out on the street? And I'm like, no, I'm inside.
You would be awesome, and that's,
But